Good evening. Go ahead and turn to Mark chapter 16. There's a verse in Mark we're going to be using tonight. I think the first couple times I did a devotional here, I tried to, proactively, I even went on the internet, looked up devotional topics and tried to find something or, look at some scripture at random and try to come up with an idea. And since then, what I've done is just kind of go what's been on my mind lately. And tonight is no different. My last couple devotionals have kind of centered around some of the attacks and persecution that the church and Christians and people identify themselves as Christians in general have been suffering in the world right now. And tonight's no different, but this one's going to be a little bit more personal, more of an attack within to the Church of Christ. And recently, what kind of brought this home for me is that we've got a student-led activity, organization, however you want to put it, that's a multi-denominational get-together. And it's put some young Christians in the church in a little bit of a predicament. And you've got to make a choice. Do you go to this meeting that they're having, this thing that they're doing, and be part of it, which has a lot of good feelings behind it, and it's, they're trying to do a good thing, but then you're there, and inevitably it will come up at some point during this meeting, usually at the end, that if you wish to be saved, then you what? Take Jesus into your heart, pray through, and you too will be saved. And as a young Christian, especially if you're a junior high school student, how do you deal with that? I mean, you're standing there, and you feel like if you stand there and you're there while they're saying this, you almost feel like that you're saying it too, that you agree with it, even though you don't. And then if you make the maybe even a harder decision not to be part of this group that someone has come to you and asked you specifically to be part of, and you say no because you have that conviction that maybe that's going to be a tough thing for you to be there when that happens, then what you're then is you're the outcast, and most of us have heard this when you're in the church. What, only y'all are going to be saved, and then you have to deal with that with your peers at school, which is a hard thing to do. It's a lot harder for the kids to deal with than the adults when it comes to something like that. And so that got me thinking that what could we tell people in the church, both young and old, to have them, kind of deal with this a little bit? What's something that if the conversation came up, if it was the right place to be able to bring it up, what could they hang their hat on to be able to have a conversation that doesn't get bogged down? Because certainly it can get bogged down. And it is a difficult thing because no one wants to be wrong, and there's a lot of pride involved. And I remember growing up when I was a kid, I had one friend who went to Catholic church. I had another friend who went to Baptist church. And if we started having conversations about it, it really wasn't about faith and belief. It was about, you can't tell me that my church and the church my parents go to and the church my grandparents go to is wrong. And so it's almost like it's your sports team, and my sports team is the best. And in basketball, when you're sitting there in a game and one guy collides into another one driving to the basket, well, if you're on the side of the stands of the guy driving to the basket, well, the guy was blocking. And if you're on the other side of the gym, well, the guy charged. And both of you would fight to the death. And the same thing happens with religion, unfortunately. So what I want to talk about a little bit is one of my favorite things, which is logic. And I love logic. I think it's undervalued, underused, and one of the best skills that someone can use. And I use it every day at my work. And between logic and a good history probably means more than anything I ever do when it comes to diagnosing someone in the medical field. And if you're really good at that, 90% certainty what's going on with someone before you've laid a stethoscope on them or ordered a test. And that's something I've valued more and more with my life. I want to give you an example of something that we're going to get back to this subject tonight. When I've talked to my girls about creation, evolution, and stuff like that, you can get bogged down in everything from dinosaurs and fossils and carbon dating and stuff like that. But what I wanted them to have was something to hang their hat on by using logic. And I said, if you have a conversation with someone, what you need to do is you need to tell them, you can't talk to me about any of this until you can explain to me where it came from. And what I mean by that is they'll talk about everything back to the Big Bang, but then you say, okay, where did that come from? Well, what do you mean? Where did it come from? Okay? If you look at the laws of the universe that we live in, there's a law of conservation of mass, which is mass is neither created or destroyed. So they would have to say that that big ball of super compact mass that exploded and then eventually led to all the planets, the stars, and boom, here we are. They've got to explain where that came from. And within this universe, the laws in the universe, that cannot be explained. And so you have to have more faith to think that that super dense ball of matter has been there forever than it does to believe that there's something outside the universe that's timeless, which is God that created it. So logically, it makes no sense for the Big Bang because where did it come from? And I told them that you can't, anyone who wants to have a conversation about anything else, you got to go back to that. They can't talk to you about anything unless they can explain that. Where did it come from? You know, and you can't get an answer from that from someone who scientifically is going to go from the point of view of this universe. And so I wanted to kind of think about that in terms of logic, something for kids to hang their hat on when it comes to the whole baptism thing. And I want y'all to look at Mark 16, verse 16. And this is Jesus speaking, and this is after he's been crucified, after he's been buried, and after he's been raised and come back. And he is talking to the apostles and says, he, and this is King James Version, that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned. Holman Christian Version. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved, but whoever does not believe shall be condemned. English Standard Version. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved, but whoever does not believe will be condemned. NIV. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved, but whoever does not believe will be condemned. New American Standard. He who has believed and has been baptized shall be saved, but he who has disbelieved shall be condemned. By the way, if someone wants to bring it up that you're talking to, the word baptized comes from the Greek word baptismo, which means literally to dip or immerse. So you can't talk your way out of what baptism means. So if you're having a conversation with someone and you set a couple of ground rules. A, do you believe in God? Yes. B, do you believe in Jesus Christ, that he was the Son of God, came to earth, and lived as one of us, but he is also part of God? Yes. And C, this is a very important one. Do you believe that Scripture was given to us by God and that it's infallible? Okay, now that one, if you've got someone who says, well, you know, maybe not all the Scripture is exactly accurate, you know, this was written by men, etc. Well, at that point, what you need to tell them is that if there's any part of the Scripture that's potentially untrue, then none of it can be believed. You might as well just throw the Bible and just walk away. Okay? But once you get past that point, if you can get someone to agree with you to points A, B, and C, then the only Scripture you have to bring up is Mark 16:16. And they have to explain that to get past not having to be baptized. And how are they going to do that? Okay? Because logically, if you agree to A, B, and C, okay, then you would have to say, well, if baptism isn't part of being saved, and Christ did say, he that believes and is baptized, it wasn't or, it wasn't, you know, some other conjunction there, it was and. What you have to be able to say is, well, maybe he really didn't mean that. Okay, well, that's not logical if you agree to A, B, and C. Well, maybe he didn't know. Well, then again, if you agree to A, B, and C, that doesn't fly either. So what you're left with is you had the Son of God who said that he that believes and is baptized shall be saved. And so for them to then go home, if you had that conversation with them, and to ignore that, that's something they're going to have to figure out themselves deep down inside. And they're going to have to, come up their own way of thinking about things. And maybe that means that for that kid, they're going to have a conversation with their parents and maybe even do something that's their parents don't do, their grandparents don't do, their cousins, aunts, and uncles don't do. And that's a hard thing for them. But, I just wanted to bring this up tonight that I understand what our kids are going through, We did when we were in school. We had to have those conversations where you felt like a little bit of an outcast, and I know our kids do too. But I want them to have something, one tiny thing like that they can hang their hat on, that logic dictates that baptism is crucial. And it's just, I just hope they are able to use that, although it's uncomfortable, and I agree with that. And then not every opportunity is going to be the opportunity to have that conversation. But anyway, that's all I have. But if anyone has anything they need tonight, if they need prayers from the church, if they feel like that it's time to become a Christian and to follow Christ's teaching in Mark 16:16 that says that you must be baptized and believe in him to be saved, please come forward and we will give them help.